Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to the podcast, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as sharing your comments within the comments section. You could also follow the channel on mindbodyspirit.fm for the audio syndicated podcast. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Madi Murphy. Madi is a world renowned astrologer, intuitive, shamanic practitioner, spiritual teacher, and more. And she's also an author of In the Cosmic Zone. Madi is going to be discussing a lot of insight about her life, her transformation, astrology, intuition, and more. So without further ado, we bring on Madi Murphy on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Madi Murphy, it's a tremendous honor to have you here on my podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jacob. I'm already just feeling so excited and delighted to be in your energy.
I'm super jazzed for this conversation. I've had some incredible astrologers on, my podcasts, and they've really impacted a lot of the consciousness of the channel. And I don't compare or contrast, but what you do is even like you're a unicorn in many ways, and it's just next level shit, as we say. The work that you do. But for my viewers who aren't familiar with a little bit about your work, which I know they'll begin to better understand, can you tell us a little bit about your work? Because to me, it's something outside the box within an outside the box industry, at least from me, and that's very innovative and cutting edge. But tell us a little bit about your work so that my viewers could better know your brilliance and your wisdom that you have to offer here.
Oh, thank you so much for that, first of all. And yeah, thank you for also validating why it's sometimes so hard to figure out, what's my little LinkedIn bio? Because I'm like, I'm in an outside the box of an already outside the box industry. But I'm very honored and humbled that I get to do amazing work, which I guess would be the most elevator pitch, short, digestible dose is I make the metaphysical very physical. I like to bring down, everything about connecting more deeply to spirit and to yourself, especially through the lens of the wisdom of the stars, astrologos, astrology, to really help you on your journey of understanding your soul's purpose in a big, high, gorgeous, evolutionary way. Like, why are you here? Who are you? What are you here to do? To help you remember that, but also to give you really practical tools to optimize your experience here on earth
Mhm.
and like understand how to show up for yourself in your most aligned, clear, empowered, confident, and liberated way. So you could also then, I believe, hold more clear and unencumbered space for the liberation of others. And I do all of that through, like you, media, social media, podcasts, newsletter. I'm like, if you're interested and you're out there, I will give you a little digestible dose of ancient and astrological wisdom, many different ways. I serve up my content all over for anyone who's interested.
Mhm. So as a Taurus, and people know my channel, I'm a Taurus. I love what you do because in many ways, we love bringing things down to earth as a Taurus, and what you do is wonderful. You make it palatable, digestible for people to be more empowered to connect to the stars and also bring that in to their own personal lives. And it's very eclectic and broad base. For someone that has such a wide umbrella of really powerful passions and services, what kind of got you going in this? Like, because it's fascinating to me to be in this field, but I'm always interested into the what and the why. That really makes Maddie Murphy who she is today.
Mm. Well, I think you might relate to this, and I'm sure a lot of people listening. I think the journey to where I've gotten to today is so not linear. It wasn't a linear, I didn't have like this wasn't a career path for me growing up in my Long Island high school, right? I wouldn't go to my career counselor and be like, "I wanna be a cosmic consultant and help people live their best, most empowered lives through astrology and inner healing and looking at the Akashic records and shamanic medicine." Unfortunately, that wasn't a path then, but, um, from a young age, I'm sure like a lot of people, I felt really connected to something bigger, right? That magic was real, that, you know, there was something really cool to tap into. I was like, that little witchy kid casting spells and making potions in the woods and feeling like, "Ooh, I could talk to the wind," and, all of that, but I felt that way well into, like, my teenage years, and as someone who always felt a little bit like an other, it always helped me feel like myself when I was in this place of connecting to creativity, to art, to magic. But then, like, I think like a lot of people could relate to because that isn't really like something that society values or we can't like, monetize or put in a niche little labeled box. Somewhere along the way, I would say probably a college age, I started to be like, "Get serious. You gotta get real." Like, figure out a job, go into a path that's gonna be successful. And
Mhm,
my both my parents are entrepreneurs, so I knew I'd always wanna do something that was a little bit working, for myself, or something a little out of the box.
mhm,
But I was doing things more in a traditional, like, publishing field and marketing, and I think the further away I got from that version of me, the little version of me,
mhm,
I just started feeling really empty and sort of kind of trying to fill those little parts of myself that I had fragmented off with just the other things, right? Like the relationships, job promotion, the shopping, the brunches, the status, and it just made me feel like really tired and really disconnected and quite depressed and disassociated actually.
mhm,
And then and I always had that inner knowing, but I no one ever told me what it was, and I definitely wouldn't have said I was psychic then. But a lot of that was starting to become really numb. And around my Saturn return, which happens in your late 20s, I didn't know it was happening, but in my late 20s, I started having some pretty big pings from spirit that my life was not mine, it was not on the right track. But my head tried to override it
mhm,
until I had, I would say, like a dark night of the soul, like breakdown. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was super anxious. I was like losing weight like crazy, really unhealthy. And it was just, and spirit was sending me crazy signs, like the craziest like messages and pings and synchronicities that was like blowing my mind that were even getting through like my thick skull. And I made a really big decision. I was set to get married. And 2 weeks before my wedding, which was literally the day before my Saturn return, I called it off my wedding. I was like, this is a beautiful man. He was so sweet. It just wasn't my deep soul yes. I was kind of doing things to check the boxes. And I just heard like something, from spirit. It was just like, this is a no. And I talk about this a little bit in my book, but up until that point, I was really living in like the good girl complex where I was just like, yes, 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 disease to please, as Oprah says. And really being in that place of just like kind of blending in, saying yes, doing the right thing on the right track. And I remember like having to call off my wedding just because my own intuition told me everyone on surface, on paper, everything looked fine, but I just knew it wasn't for me. And it was the scariest thing I've ever had to do, to let down all these people in my life, to have to walk away from this path I had set forward. But I remember it was like coming back to myself because the morning after I called off that wedding, even though on paper my life was a disaster, like everything was just imploded, I woke up feeling so free and like myself again. And I started to be able to eat and sleep again. And I just kind of made a commitment from that day forward that I would go on a journey back to remembering myself and only choose things that really felt like really aligned and really authentic.
mhm,
And I asked spirit to show me what am I supposed to do next? I'm like, I literally have nothing right now. I quit my job. I didn't have my apartment. My parents just got divorced, sold my childhood home. I called off my wedding. I was like, I'm starting from nothing all over again. I'm 29. Show me my next steps. And one of the first things that appeared was somebody being like, hey, um, have you ever heard of this astrology book? And then I started reading it. And I hadn't looked at astrology since I was like a teenager. And it just started being like, okay, like the first things that felt like, okay, like I wanna this feels like a yes, right? That tuned in frequency. So that's and the rest is long story long, me getting to where I'm at and these tools, whether they were, working with my own energy, reading oracle cards, meditating, you getting readings or healings from other people, my spiritual self-care, but definitely astrology. They were the things that helped me get out of bed on the days where
Mhm,
in my mind, my life was so overwhelming. I was like, "Where do I even start?" And it'd be like, "Okay, just pull a card and focus on that for the day instead of all the monkey mind thoughts," right?
mhm,
Like, "Did I just ruin my life? Did I just do this?" The
mhm,
days you second guess yourself. And then I started realizing, we can get into it later, but as I moved out in the world and expanded into myself, I was like, "Oh, these tools were great from that moment of deep heartache and heartbreak and grief and feeling lost." But then these tools guided me to starting my first business in Montauk and
mm,
building a really successful, startup, and using the tools of, intuitive development,
mm,
astrology, and all this. And so I started realizing why I do this now is I'm like, these are life changing systems of like they're not just like a spiritual practice. I'm like, these are like technologies for us to really tap into, like,
mhm,
and they're a support system, and they're just like a roadmap back to yourself. So that's my long answer, but I'm very grateful because without that, like, kind of locomotive big no from the universe, I would have just kept going on a path that wasn't really for me, right? And I'm grateful for, like, the ways that my body was kind of, like, resisting and protesting. It was like, "Fine, if the head's not gonna be on board, the body is gonna protest." And
mhm,
is when I really realized how strong our intuition is and how, all the signs and everything that conspired in that moment made me realize, like, how also held we are and how protected and directed we are, which is also something that I love to share with people.
mhm. Wow. It from what you're saying, it really seems that there was a dichotomy of pain and intuition, where going through something very painful was a doorway that really opened you up and allowed you to listen to your intuition, and as a result, that transformed not only your personal life, but the work that you're doing in your calling. Do you use that model for other clients who come in your way? Like your example, is that something that has given you really insight to why people are stuck and how they're able to move the needle in different ways? And if so, I'm sure there's someone out there who's really hitting a
Mm,
wall and maybe not the exact circumstances, but having a parallel type
mm.
sensation to where you're at. So how could you speak to that as well as some of the work that you're doing with clients and your journeys as a degree of insight to their positionality?
Yes, so absolutely. What's really cool about the work I do is I find, especially in my one-on-one practice, so many people come to me when they're either in the middle of a huge life, like, transition, and they want to make that transition transformational, and really use that moment to pivot and realign themselves, right? Instead of being like, or I find that sometimes when people sign up to work with me, they don't understand why. They just get this intuitive nudge, and then the opportunity strikes, right? Something happens. They end up like either they lose their job, or they get a huge opportunity, or they get some kind of big life circumstance that is a cosmic curveball, and I like to help them, kind of tune in and align with themselves so they can understand who they are in their most authentic expression, right? Help them understand their gifts, what they are so good at, what is their unique medicine, their magic to share with the world, and then how they can share that and embody it in a way where they are feeling grounded and centered and well resourced and present. um, uh, and it's really cool, and I like to kind of say with my clients, like, my job is to help them just get into alignment a little faster or maybe interpret those signs or nudges a little bit quicker because we said we like to listen to spirit when it's a whisper or a nudge instead of a whole shove off of a cliff, right? Because that's kind of where I was. I had ignored the whispers, and then I started having, like, the body breakdown, and so I like to help people get there a little bit faster and figure out, like, "Oh, okay, we all" it's very natural to get out of alignment. It's very natural to all of a sudden look around at your life one day, and whether that's your career, your relationships, your relationship to self, and kind of think like, "Oh, I've kind of built my life in all these ways, or maybe folded myself up in all these ways to make other people comfortable or to fit into other people's expectations of me or what I think is gonna,
Uh-huh.
make deem me more valid of worthiness of love or success or abundance." And then all of a sudden you look around one day and you're like, I folded myself in so small that like I don't even know who I am anymore, right? And so I love to help people begin that unfolding, that reemerging, and just taking up more space. And what's really cool is that if anyone's listening to this and they're feeling that, the second that you say yes, the second that you're like, I'm ready for more, or like, I'm ready to make a big change, I 100 times out of 100 times, spirit will be like, great. Like, here
Mhm.
we g let's go. And you'll get that you'll get that first opportunity to make the shift. And like I like to say in my book, from the comfort zone into living into more of that cosmic zone way of life.
Mhm. Intuition, for many people, they think it's like, yeah, sitting comfortably and getting this message, but oftentimes what intuition asks you to do could be quite out of your own box and hard to trust. So how do people really navigate that human part that wants everything the same, that wants to hold on to, where this voice of intuition is coming in and it's like could almost ask you to, flip your whole house over and everything like that. And our part is feeling very scared or scarcity, like, oh my God, like how could I do that? How do people really lean into, and fine tune that voice as well as understand if that is the voice of intuition versus their own thoughts? Like, how would they dichotomize those 2?
Mm. Well, I really like to think of, like, first of all, when you're starting to listen to that inner voice and tune in, one of the questions I get, and I think I'm hearing this in your question, is, is this my intuition or is this anxiety or fear or like all these voices, right? And again, your intuition speaks to you first of all, is usually more of a whisper, and that's why practices like meditation, card pulling, sitting in nature, putting down the phone are all really important because my one teacher talks about the mind like the lake, right? And it's like everything's splashing, and there's motorboats, and there's kids in it, and there's jet skis,
Mhm.
and we get and receive messages from spirit in the place of the still lake. So we have to come into some sort of stillness, and so when people are, like, afraid to sit with themselves, that's usually a sign that something is off in our lives because it means we're avoiding something, whether it's
Mhm.
something we don't wanna look at or we're scared of making that change or we're just so restless, right? So uneasy with ourselves that, we're, like, scared to see what comes up when we have that minute, so if you can take some time for a little quiet. I love just, like, a nature walk. I'm like, "Great." Like, being by the ocean, being by water really helps, like, tune outside noise, and then when I tune in, it's like your intuition usually speaks in those whispers, in those light ripples in the lake, but your intuition is never fearful. It's never mean. It's
Mhm.
never a critic of you. So if you hear anything like that, like you're too dumb, you're too old, no one will ever support this, that's not your intuition, right? That's some programming. That's some old outdated programming. And your intuition speaks to you. Usually, it's like it actually is usually your first hit and it might not be the 2nd or 3rd, 4th, but it's usually, like, the longest hit, meaning if you keep coming back to something, if your mind keeps going back to something, if you keep having this nudge for a while, like, "You know what? Maybe I really do want to move." I wanna move to Portugal, or I wanna pursue my art, or I wanna, like, reach back out to that cute boy or girl that, like, I, you know, met a year ago, but I can't get them off my mind. It's like there is a reason, and our intuition will speak to us, but it also will speak to us in ways that we have to learn how to trust. And that's where, like, it's a practice, and whether you're doing it day one, or whether you're having someone else help you, going to a reader, or whether you want to develop it with yourself. It's a practice, and that might look, again, going in nature. That might look like listening to your body. Like, how does your body feel when you tune in on certain questions? But knowing that, like, if something comes from the place of your intuition, if something comes from the place of feeling heart centered and it makes you feel more alive, it is meant for you. And it's actually not your job to figure out the how. It's
Mhm.
really not. It's just your job to stay in alignment with who you are, with your vision, with
Mhm.
your values. Say yes to everything in alignment with that, and no to everything that's not in alignment with that, and keep your eyes peeled for the next illuminated stepping stone, your next illuminated yes, and just follow that with so much faith. It's almost a little reckless. It's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna do this? I can't believe I'm d" When I tell you, Jacob, I have made the biggest decisions of my life,
Mhm.
starting businesses, ending big relationships, getting married, buying houses because I have seen a cardinal and had a dream about, like, I have made the hugest life decisions off of, like, the funniest intuitive hits that if I tell most people out there in the world, they'd be like, "Lady, you gotta get checked out." But it's like I was, looking for the signs, and it wasn't just the signs because, that's one thing, but it's also feeling that aliveness. You are here. Every person listening to this is here.
Mhm.
Their soul came here for one thing, to expand and to grow and to learn through, like, expanding into its fullest potential, and we don't do that through staying in the comfort zone, and
Mhm.
our hearts came here to learn how to be so open, and again, like, if we have faith in our souls to expand and faith in our hearts to be open, and just trust that everything else will figure out our way through, and that spirit really has our back, life becomes so fun, even in the mess, even in the chaos, even when you don't actually, especially when you don't have it all figured out. And the last thing I'll say is, anyone who's listening is like, yeah, but, what's the plan? How is this gonna work?" Let me tell you, as a human, if I told you the plan for your life and how everything was gonna map out right now, if I told everyone how every day, every detail was gonna work, how you're gonna fall in love, how you're gonna heal from this heartbreak, how you were gonna step into your career, how you were gonna share your art, it'd be so boring. It'd be
Mhm.
so boring, right? Like, who wants to live through the book they already read every single sentence on? So, it's like, be open to the unknown and the adventure of it all, and I promise you'll be so rewarded for that.
Mhm. I love it. It's really beautifully said, Maddie, and reminds me of a quote that I always reference from a Holocaust survivor named Elie Wiesel, which says, "God
Mm,
created us because God loves stories, and each day is an opportunity to live, experience, and embody a different story. And we do
mm,
that through shifting and changing. And what I love about you is you're able to not just talk about this in a podcast. You're someone who really lives your words very clearly, it seems, from what you did on your wedding. And I'm sure throughout this whole podcast, we'll get a lot of different examples and illustrations because we love different stories. But on the topic of expansiveness, I know a lot of people really have come to really know your work through the stars and through astrology. To someone who, in our society, everything needs to have an explanation. Like, I tell my clients to go out for a walk. They're like, "Why?" Well, it produces negative ions, and it produces blood flow in your brain, decreases depression and anxiety. So, if there's a catch to an explanation, most likely people today will buy in, but it has to really have some kind of catch or something for them. So, I just
mm,
ask for people listening, how and why does astrology impact our lives, and why tune into the cosmos when we could just focus on the dramas in front of us? How could that be a productive
mm.
tool for the average person, whatever that means.
I love that. I love it so much, because, I think if you told me that I was gonna be this deep in astrology, I'd be like, "What?" Because there's a few things about astrology that are, like, first of all, let's just get it out of the way. It's, like, very confusing. Like, you're
Mhm,
like sextile and Uranus, and there's a trine and all these houses. So it's like this whole other language, right? And in that, there can be a barrier to entry just because of the language or the graph or all these squiggly lines and glyphs
mhm.
and symbols. Um,
That's the
but
raunchy astrology. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the astrology that's like, "Wha" and people just look at it and it's like, "Nope, not for me," right? And then there's also, the astrology that it's not bad, but I just wanna say that there's some astrology out there that, really casts something, puts you into a box, that puts you into a label, and just like any, religion or spirituality, there's certain astrology that can be a little didactic, a little dogmatic, a little bit like, "This always has to be this way, and this always has to be this way, and if you have this Venus in this sign, you're like this."
Mhm,
I My personal brand of astrology, my relationship is what I wrote in my book is I believe in astrology that aligns you, not
mhm.
defines you, right? Like I'm a Virgo and I have read in books things about being a Virgo that make me want to crawl into a hole and never go outside of my house again. I'm like, okay, there's no room for like the expansiveness, right? So I first of all like to use archetypal energy in astrology. And, Carl Jung was really into archetypes and his work was very influenced by studying astrology because
Mm,
there's just this universal, right, themes, universal personas, universal keys to our human evolutionary journey. And through astrology, we can really understand them. And to me, archetypes are just like cosmic costumes, like playing divine dress up for our soul, where we can be like, okay, like, you have an Aries moon. Aries moons are so brave, they get things done,
mhm,
they just know how to act, they, like, get up, they stand up for what they believe in, and there's something really confident, they're okay with, doing things by themselves, for themselves. There is truly why I started my business was I wanted to invoke more Aries energy. I was like, I'm a Virgo, Pisces, Cancer. I am like a little sensitive. What does everyone around me think of me? Like, do I have permission to be myself yet? Everyone around me? And then when I understood that maybe I don't have Aries as woven into my chart in terms
mhm,
of the planets, I was like, "Okay, but I have Aries in my chart, and it actually connects to my career and my
mhm,
10th house and my public self." So when I understood that, it gave me one of my favorite roles of astrology. It gave me permission. It
mhm,
gave me planetary permission, like a permission slip from the celestial beings to be myself, right? And so there's this concept of archetypal energy in astrology, and we can get into that we all carry all 12 zodiac themes, and we can there's nothing that anyone has on this planet where they're operating with more archetypal energy than someone else, like, we can all access it, and then I also just love it as this framework, right? I don't
mhm,
even look at astrology as a belief system in a spiritual way. I have other spiritual practices and I filter them through the lens of astrology. But for me, astrology is this study of patterns and cycles
mhm,
throughout history. We can look at, wow, like what's going on in the world right now.
mhm,
We're in the astrology of the French Revolution. And I'm like, that checks out. Like, and I've known that for 10 years that this was coming. So it really helped me prepare my nervous system, it helped me prepare my work, it helped me prepare, how to make sense of this moment we're in time, how I can show up better in my community. And that's offered me a lot. But we also understand those patterns and cycles within ourselves. So, you know, um, every month, we go through a similar pattern.
mhm,
Every year, we go through certain patterns. We can look back on the year ahead and be like, "What did I learn?" We go through much larger phases and patterns, like the Saturn return. Every 30 years, we go through a check-in with ourselves. And if we begin to understand these, and it's a little advanced, so sometimes it's nice to have a guide, we can start to really make sense of our lives in a much deeper, richer way. And I think my favorite part of all of this is just it's the best it's the best self-awareness framework ever. Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, I love all that, but nothing for me beats astrology in terms of understanding my personality type, my needs, my wants, my desires, my obstacles, my opportunities, my shadow, my brilliance. But it also helps me not internalize things. Like, okay,
Mhm.
this is the way I am because of this going on, and I can use that, not as an excuse, but an explanation. And
Mhm.
now because I know myself better, I can do better, right? Or I can understand that if I'm going through a certain transit, I know what to focus on, right? So I can really optimize what I'm working on. And it's really just, the last thing I'll say about this is astrology can be so big. I'm talking about all these different things. I'm
Mhm.
talking about Saturn. I'm talking about, big phases and zodiac keys. One of the best ways to start getting into astrology for someone listening who feels like this is all really confusing and convoluted, the ultimate gateway drug, the cosmic gateway drug into astrology is the moon.
Mhm.
I mean, quite literally in astrology, the moon is our inner world. So when we begin to work with the moon, we come home more deeply to ourselves. The moon is an archetypal symbol of our cosmic mama. And we literally have an umbilical cord to the cosmos when we look
Mhm.
out at her because we can see her, right?
Mhm.
Maybe not on a new moon, but I know you live like near the water and I
Mhm.
live near the water. And there are just even in New York, when I'm in Manhattan, there are times where I am stopped in my tracks
Mhm.
by the moon. I'll just be like and it's this reminder, "Oh, yeah, like, we're connected to something more as above, so below," whether
Mhm.
we want to admit it or not, and the moon, we know, affects the tides. We know the moon affects people's personalities, ask anyone who works in a hospital emergency room on a full moon. We know that moon effects are if you pay attention to my animal, my dog, there's so many zoomies on the full
Mhm.
moon. We have, like, biodynamic farmers. I have fishermen that I know out here in Montauk that work with the moon
Mhm.
tides. So it affects all of us. It's just, are we willing and open to
Mhm.
turning to face that? And then allowing ourselves to co-create, right? To
Mhm.
work with these energies instead of sometimes getting worked over by them. And that is when life starts to happen through us and not
Mhm.
to us. And I think it's so beautiful. So I like to say, start with the moon
Mhm.
because it's something we all kind of understand, right? The other stuff's a little abstract, like Neptune. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? What's
Mhm.
going on with Neptune? But the moon, like, that is one of those practices for me that brings me a lot of calm, that connects me back to that inner child I talked about
Mhm.
who, like, loved looking at the moon. And even, I have an 18-month-old, and when the moon is out on my deck, he's just like, "Mama, mama, mama, mama," and I'm like, "I know, that's Mama Moon. That's so cool, right?" Like, she's right there. So, I know, again, a long answer, but, like, there's many different ways of working with astrology, but I'd say if someone's just looking to get started day 1, I'm like, just, like, go sit and look at the moon and then start to be like, "What else can I learn
Mhm.
about that moon, the moon sign I was born under, and what does that mean to me?" And I
Mhm.
promise you will have some sort of beautiful light bulb, like, really heart-opening moment.
Mm. It's remarkable how we just kinda live our lives in this box and think we're just in this room in this house, but forgetting we're on this big spinning planet around the sun, and how so many people live such a boxed in life. And so I love that you were able to really illustrate that, yes, there's an intellectual component of astrology, the information of it. But I think that difference of spirituality versus other practices is the direct experience and the
Mhm.
curiosity and the embodiment. And
Mhm.
that's I strongly encourage, viewers to really try to explore and experiment with this stuff and not just kind of, intellectualize, but to really start with the feeling and the emoting of these things because it could be quite profound in allowing us to remind ourselves the interconnectivity. Now, you have something called, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cosmic zone and the cosmic RX, which are terms like I've heard before, but you put your own unique twist and branding and even book, on those kind of things. What are some of the implications of those terms, and how could people really understand and embody, these principles that you really seem to drive a lot of your contribution to humanity by, if you will?
Oh, no, I love that, and, so the cosmic RXs and the cosmic zone really go hand in hand, and they're all part of actually this larger umbrella concept that I look at as the cosmic revolution. So, I'll start there. I really started to realize, about at the time of my calling off my wedding, it was 2012, and if you remember, there's all those Mayan prophecies about the world ending, and so part of my quest, part of my hunger for, like, being so open to wanting to come back to myself, I just had a probably something a lot of people listening here, like an insatiable hunger, thirst for esoteric knowledge, for wisdom. I felt like, again, everything on earth didn't make sense to me, so I was looking for other, like, make help me make sense of this planet, of what's happening, what I'm feeling, but I can't quite articulate, and what's my role in it, and who am I, and all these things, and so I had gone to certain, I was living in the East Village, Manhattan at the time, so I would sign up for every cool and kooky talk and seminar and workshop, and a few things that came up, whether they were, prophecies from, Hopi elders or, great brilliant astrologers or psychics, was this talk about the old world ending, right? Like, we were leaving this head-centered, quote unquote, like masculine, but more of a
Mhm.
toxic masculine world. And that this prophecy was about a new world being built, but it wasn't going to happen overnight. And I started to become really hungry in this information. And so went to this talk and they talked about 2020. This was 2012, mind you,
Mhm.
2013, like January 2013. And they're like, in 2020, there's going to be this thing called the Great Capricorn Convergence. And we're going to experience another moment in this world ending and the systems crumbling and leaders will fall and the world will stand still. And I was like, okay, well, like, we all live in this day and age where even the biggest story, the news cycle is so fast. Like,
Mhm.
how is there going to be something that's going to affect everyone on the
Mm.
planet and make the world stand still? I was like anything, my heart and soul took the information it needed, but my mind was like, grain of salt. Let's see. Let's see how that really shakes out." So, even leading into that though, as we got a little closer, I was like, "Okay, 2016, 2017." I'm like, "I am feeling some sort of revolutionary energy kick up." So I started and realizing that, like, the way through this moment in time is we needed more people, leaders and artists and creatives and parents and therapists and lawyers and people out there, the change makers of our society, living more in the heart center and feeling more permission to be their witchy, weird, mystical, kind of misfit self in the name of the highest good, because I was starting to feel it's like, yeah, this like the old way of doing things it's starting to feel like it's losing traction, right? And so I was like, we're in this cosmic revolution. There's something happening where we need to like step into our most cosmic selves. But I didn't fully get it. I was like, this is happening, right? And so and I was like, okay, but we need to me, like this big revolution is happening. But even I work with people who are some of them day one on their journey, some of them are in their late 20s, like I was, having these big life changes during their Saturn return. And some people I work with are badass, amazing, like, people who've already done the things in life, you have the big businesses, the published books, the Netflix shows, things, but they still need the reminders. That's part of being human is we forget stuff all the time. We can get out of alignment so fast, especially in these big leap moments. So I started Cosmic RX with my business partner to be like, these are just your digestible doses of what you need to know based on your chart, based on your heart, or what's going on in the astrological weather. So it's like right now, at the time of this recording, we're about to go into Mercury retrograde. So I'll talk to people like, hey, this week, just remember,
Mhm.
check your back up your data, like make sure you listen to that check engine light just because even however aligned you are, how enlightened you are, we're still in this human experience and we still need the RXs. And what I also liked about that in my readings I did with people is as, like, there's this cosmic revolution going on, so I'm giving these big readings from helping people connect back into their purpose, to give them that planetary permission slip, to give them that pep talk, to help them remember who they are. But I know for me, I would walk away from some of the most brilliant readings I've ever had in my life. People who I don't even know how I got the privilege to sit with them, like world renowned, like shamans and astrologers and psychics. And sometimes I would walk away from the reading and be like, yes, I feel amazing. But then, like, a day later, I'd be like, "What am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? What
Mhm.
was it I have homework?" I'm a Virgo. What was my homework? Like, what was am I supposed to be, like, focusing on something? And, in some ways, you might say, "It's okay, spirit has it," like, that was your reading. But for me, having an empowered, actionable steps, whether that's a ritual, an action step, something to do after that reading was really empowering and grounding for me. So that's where Cosmic RX was born. It's like, do this today, focus on this week, or
Mhm.
Jacob, in your chart right now, you know, we have certain things going on. You're actually in your Jupiter return, a really amazing once in a 12-year cycle in your 4th house. So, like, it's time to take care of your home, get
Mhm.
grounded down, like, be really in a place of, like, nurturing your root chakra, your sense of belonging, but also maybe it's a great time to do some stuff to your actual home if you want. And then
Mhm.
you're like, "Okay, great." Like, and I would give you some prescriptions for that, some ideas, and that way you could feel, again, like you're co-creating with spirit. It's not just
Mhm.
happening to you, it's happening through you. And then the 3rd part, the cosmic zone, was kind of the unintentional, amazing, cool celestial side effect. I'm here doing this work because I know we have a revolution happening. I'm like, something's coming, it's big, and I want people feeling empowered and aligned and
Mhm.
clear. And then 2020 happened, and I was like, "Okay, I get it. I
Mhm.
see the prophecy, the astrology was astrologying." I was already a believer, but now I was like, done, fully bought in. No one could ever take that away from me. But what I started to realize was on this journey of getting people ready for their personal evolution to fuel our collective revolution, something really cool happened. I saw people tap into this place of such alignment, such
Mhm.
authentic expression, such flow that they started just like maybe they came to me to help with a business idea or to find a partner. And they went from a whole inside out life glow up where they are feeling so fulfilled, so free. They're having fun and they're maybe taking on more than they ever have in their lives, like busy, busy things, but their lives, they feel able and equipped to meet the moment and to trust themselves and to navigate things happening around them with so much more self-assuredness and
Mhm.
confidence and really like living on their own terms, right? And on living a life on their own terms and really connected to their life force. And that's what I started calling the cosmic zone. 'Cause I'm like, oh, like is happening. Like, oh my God, like the alignment is aligning and you're getting like the signs and symbols. And it's almost like my texts, my emails, my DMs are filled with some of the craziest stories you'll ever hear, Jacob, because my clients being like the align it's wild. And I started realizing again, that thing that I felt as a little girl. I was like,
Mhm.
life is so magical. Like
Wow.
life is really magical. Even in some really hard things we're going through, there's always magic to tap into. There's always miracles to experience. We are like the greatest miracle, the greatest masterpiece. And so that's where the cosmic zone was born. And then I was like, okay, how do I try and replicate what I was doing in the one-on-one practices? How do I try to bring that out into a book so that people can start to tap into and taste a little bit of their own cosmic zone?
I love it. Wow. It must feel nice for you going through this alone as a young girl and now having everyone join the party. You're like, it's never too late to join, and now everyone's kind of catching on to the things that you were very tuned into, and I think it's great that you have been able to have spirituality with practicality because it's like
Mm,
we hear these such great things, but it's like cooking spinach. You have like a million different things and you have like one little thing back. And so it's great. It sounds good. It looks good. But what do you practically get with that? It's like you have an epiphany. So what? What do you do with it? That's the biggest
mm,
thing. And I
Mhm.
think it's great that you're giving people these prescriptions to really navigate the high roads of their life and to really go with the flow and really live a spiritual life. And it's amazing how the planet could feel like such a different world when you're tuned in, you know? So, yeah.
That's it. That's it, Jacob, and you just saying that, I'm tearing up a little bit because my inner child I talk about this in the book, but, like, you should only be looking to impress 2 people in life, your 8-year-old self and your 88-year-old self, and that's, like, one of the things I really check in with myself on, and you saying this is, like, my little 8-year-old self, like, every day, she is just in awe that what I get to do for my work is to connect with other like-minded really cool people who love this or want to learn more about it. So it's really special. Thank you for mirroring that back so well.
I love it, because what's the RX when we're younger is to be normal, and it seems like the RX right now is to be weird, to be different, to be unique. That's the prescription because that is something that you were supposed to do. You're supposed to add something different and not be redundant. That's how change is able to
Yeah.
happen. That's how authentic living is able to be in, and that must feel very great for you as well as people that you're working with to have the licensure to finally be weird and be different, something that was quite stigmatized and ostracized probably at a certain point in time.
Absolutely. So well said, Jacob. So well said.
Yeah. So I'm wondering for you, because we love stories.
Mhm.
And you've really showcased a lot. Is there something that really stands out, like, in your own personal or professional life, that, like, if you were to have, like, one particular story that we didn't get into yet, that
Mm.
really says, like, the term is NOE, like, no other explanation, as my friend Suzanne Giesemann, rather. Is there something that you've been able to follow from the stars or intuition where there was no other explanation how this worked, and you were able to see the tremendous benefits from, trusting that information or that inner voice?
Jacob, I could sit here. We could have like a
All day.
month-long podcast. I could write
I
10
love
more
it.
books about this, which is why I love this and why life is so magical. I mean,
Yeah.
everything from, conceiving my son unexpectedly to, having some of the biggest, most life-changing, moments in my business and in my relationship with my husband. But I will say the thing that comes to mind, because when you said before story, I'm just following spirit, what I always try and do. I'm like, "Spirit, you lead me, because maybe somebody else needs to hear this today." Um, but, I think one of my life journeys and part of my Saturn return, what I didn't know, I called off my wedding. I didn't know I was like when I looked it up later, I was like, "Oh, that was like, the days leading up to my Saturn return." If astrology isn't real, then why? Of course, that happened. And one of the things I was learning about in my Saturn return, Saturn, is a planet of wanting you to take ownership and radical responsibility and have boundaries around and stand up for yourself and make some hard choices, in honor of your highest good and your highest becoming. And there's a themes and everyone's is unique. And one of my things was around my creativity and my ideas. And my whole life, I felt like, I was the creative girl, but I didn't have I wasn't the super athletic one. And I wasn't creative in the way like the theater kid. And so I always felt kind of like lost in the sauce. Like, what's my thing? What's my thing? Right. And like people went to me for advice for a lot, and I actually looked into maybe I wanna, I was a psych major, and then I was like, "Ah, not really for me," and in school, I was like a business major, I was like, "Not for me." So, my whole life, I'm kind of, like, doubting, my ideas and my creativity. So, my Saturn return, this is part of it, right? And, um, through somewhere along the way, I was gifted a session, really happenstance, with a really powerful psychic channeler, this woman, Mama Medicine, Deborah Camp in New York City, and gorgeous, like a gorgeous medicine woman. And I
Mhm.
go in, and I had my own juice business at the time, and, I was really in the dregs of entrepreneurial life. It is not glamorous running your own juice company, I just wanna say. It is hauling boxes of beets and pineapples and, calloused hands and pulp-stained clothing, and me driving a delivery truck from Montauk to Manhattan, sweating, schwitzing, like, just like no one's business, okay? So I am
Not
coming
glitz
up.
and glam, yeah, yeah,
It's not glitz and glam,
yeah.
okay? So, I go into this session again, like, sweaty, she's beautiful, she's ethereal, she's a goddess, and, I always have the same questions, right? I'm like, "Okay," like, money, I was really broke at the time, so I'm like, "What's going on with that? What's going on with this?" And she's like, "Your ancestors just, like, are coming through so strong right now, and they're telling you that you are about to enter a David and Goliath moment in life." And I'm gonna cry thinking about this because I had no idea what the F she was talking about because I'm just there to figure out, like, am I gonna have more money in my bank account soon? And, like, what's gonna
Mhm,
happen with, like, my boyfriend? Is he gonna propose? And, like, all
mm.
these questions. And she's like,
You didn't expect to get this, like,
no,
yeah.
she's like, "You're on a mythical journey right now, and something's gonna happen, and your ancestors" I'm Irish, they're like, "Your ancestors are, like, on the hills of, like, Ireland, and there's, like, so many of them, and they want you to know they have your back. Do not back down. You're gonna be so scared, but, like, there's no failing." And I'm like, "Okay," like, kind of dramatic, but, like, that's not what I came. So, I leave, and I'm, like, thinking about it. I'm like, "Okay, okay." And then a few things happen. I'm like, "Is that it? Is that it?" And, it wasn't it. And then I'm on, at going with my now husband on a trip, and I get a phone call from someone, and they're like, I had a little cafe in Brooklyn, and I sold this drink called the unicorn latte, so he called me a unicorn. I was like, "Thank you for seeing my unicorn spirit," and I really created that drink out of a spiritual way to connect to my inner child, and there's a whole long story behind it. But it came out of a really pure place, and I had learned from having a business for a few years to always do the intellectual property thing. Even when I didn't have the money, I hired an intellectual property lawyer to trademark my stuff because I had had some run-ins with people, but still not valuing my own ideas. And I found out on this trip that, um, yes, Starbucks completely, like, ripped off our drink idea, took the name, made it into this, like, sugary, awful, like, chemicals, food dye, millions of calories, sugar, like, really, like, bastardizing what I was trying to do with this thing, and that they knowingly just stepped over our IP because it's easy to find online, but they're like, "This is, like, a small rinky dink coffee shop somewhere, deep in Brooklyn." Um,
Mhm,
and I was like, "Oh god," and I was like, "I just wanna go away, I don't care." Like, "Okay, fine, just have it." That's my first response. "Just have it." It's like fawn, freeze, response, just like, and I heard that voice from the psychic reading,
mhm,
but I still was like, "I don't know if I really wanna." Like, it's just so much work, and we happen to have a really amazing pro bono, like, one of the best law firms in New York City reach out and
mm,
be like, "We'll represent you pro bono because it's a great case." And even then, I was like, "I'm scared. I don't wanna do this. I'm a people-pleasing, nice hippie girl who just wants to make some colorful drinks in a coffee shop. Like, I don't wanna do this." But I remembered the reading, and then I got an astrology reading that said I
mhm,
was in this really pivotal eclipse, and it was like eclipses are big karmic checkpoints in your life, and they happen in, like, pairings. The eclipses happen in a two-part story where they're like it's a theme, and the eclipse that I was going into in this moment in time that, like, culminated with, kind of deciding to pursue this was the eclipse. The theme was around, like, Leo energy, so standing tall in your courage, standing up
mhm,
for your art, for your creativity, and, balancing that between the Aquarius energy of, like, the community and the underdog and we the people, and kind of Aquarian energy is very anti-corporate energy, and also, in that, like, my community really had my back, my Brooklyn community of people really showed up, and I remember feeling like, "Okay, even though I am scared, you know what-less, and my head is like, 'What are you doing, lady?'" I was like, "The astrology is saying, 'Go for this.'" My ancestors already got me the message ahead of schedule, and I just was able to navigate that whole situation with something that was from another realm. Like, it didn't even feel like myself. It was like my higher self was able to guide the whole process, and it's really beautiful. I talk about it in the book, but it was a life-changing moment for me because it helped me really stand up for myself,
mhm.
and go toe to toe with this, huge corporate giant. But more importantly than that, yeah, I think it was really healing for my ancestral line, which was we were a lot of really hardworking Irish people who really didn't have a lot of say of standing up to bosses or the big guy or whoever. Um, and it also allowed my inner child to be like, wow, your ideas, your creativity, like they might not have that traditional place and that label, but like they're really valuable. Like this company's trying to steal them. That's how good they are. Like, and it was really cool for me, and because of that, it wasn't just like it was the NOE, like, no other explanation of how, like, the psychic told me this and then the astrology told me this, but it also allowed me to move with
Mhm,
the energy of someone who has all of the forces in the universe, like, behind me at my back and feeling really, again, protected and directed, like I said in
mhm.
the beginning, and that made all the difference in the whole experience, and I really came out on the other side of that, um feeling really different and also really lit on fire for empowering the smaller creatives and artists and visionaries, like, even more empowered in my mission and who I was. So, that was definitely a moment that stood out to me.
That is I mean, just the how spot on that prediction was with the David and Goliath and how real and visceral that was. And sometimes when we hear this, we're not so sure and it's
Yeah.
conceptual. And we're like, what are you talking about? And it's so outside the box and not something that I was even thinking of hearing. And it's not amazing that, not only that this all came to fruition, but now you're doing the work that she did in many ways, where
Mhm.
you're having other
Mhm.
Maddie Murphys come into your office, and every day you're having this experience that allows people to really remember who they are, why they came here, and to let go of that small sense of self that we've been carrying for so long. And that must be
Mhm.
so healing to you as well as people who are graced by your gifts and your path.
It's so cool, absolutely, Jacob. I have had mentees who have actually gone through very similar things with larger corporations and them having to stand up for themselves and their worth and their art. So it's so beautiful, and that's also why I think, anyone listening to this who is going through something, because 'cause I'm telling the story now, I'm on the other side of it, it feels good. In the moment, I was scared,
Mhm.
I was letting my heart lead, but sometimes my head would be like, "Girl," like, I'm getting hate mail on my Facebook from people who, like, love Starbucks, people who, like, I'm getting some weird energy around me, right? But again, I was protected and directed. And the thing that I just want to remind people, like, when they're listening to this, is that if you look around, trust the alignment, you're so held. And you're also probably going through something right now, because that might be, like, I would say, your medicine to take. Your medicine to take becomes the medicine you make. So, it's cool that, like, now my story and the things I learned, I've gotten to help, hundreds of people do that for themselves, and it's just added another layer to the why and to the impact and to the ripple effect out. So, if someone's listening to this and you're going through something hard, keep going. You're so held, and I promise you, in some way, your story is going to help comfort or maybe even save someone along the way.
Mhm. And this is someone who has walked each step of that journey in many ways and lived it. Maddie Murphy, this was a timeless conversation. I can't believe it's almost coming to a conclusion. It felt like 1 second, but I just was able to take in so much inspiration from yourself, your journey, and I really validate you for your honesty, vulnerability, inspiration, strength, and all the guidance that you have really given to listeners of my podcast. If viewers want to get a hold of you, I'm sure that's probably pretty hard these days. You're probably pretty busy, but if they want to book a consultation session or potentially find a book or, learn about some of your events, where's the best way to find all things Maddie Murphy, would you say?
I think always Instagram is a good hub. The Cosmic RX, like prescription, is a great jumping off point. From there, you'll find tagged my personal account. We check all of our DMs, me and my business partner. From there, we have links for the book, and we're always doing fun workshops. And we have a whole Astro Academy where you can learn things about your own chart, or learn how to use your chart to help you run and launch and grow a business. And we also have tons of free resources. And I have a weekly podcast you could find all through there. And then also, I just like to say that, like, Yeah, if someone, wants a reading with me at the time of this recording, I had to take a pause between the book, and I also had another long spirit story, but I had 2 babies in a year. That's a
Mhm.
story for a different day.
Yeah.
So she's a little like, I'm a little, like, "Oof," but I probably will be, taking readings again and probably towards the end of 2025 because I do love it. I love connecting with people. But yeah, come over to Instagram, Cosmic RX, not on Instagram, the cosmicrx.com also has all of that, and come join the party. You said a party before, and thank you for saying that. You're so intuitive. When we started to launch this business, I created everything in this business, every podcast episode, the book, by taking my own medicine, right? Going through the journey and doing everything very intentionally and listening. And I worked with spirit and I was like, "What do I wanna create for people?" Because 'Cause I'm not that spiritual person who's like, I'm not a guru, I'm not some, like, I don't have it all figured out, like, quite the opposite, and I never want anyone to think that of me. So I asked spirit, like, "How should I go into this business? How should I go into this offering?" And what I heard was, like, "Just go in like you're hosting the best party of all time." Like, you're hosting this great party where people get to love up on themselves and other people, and you're just creating the vibe. You're making the good soundtrack, you're putting out the good snacks, but it's up to everyone else too to like connect and share their magic. And it's not about you at all. You're just hosting a really good party. So when you said that, I was like, Jacob gets it. Thank you.
It's a heck of a party, and I'm sure your loved ones in the spirit realm are cheering you on like crazy in that party as well, because 'cause you're creating a beautiful heaven here on this earth, and,
Mhm.
that's gonna be a wonderful, celebration, once that day comes, but far away from now. But really do recommend checking out Maddie Murphy's, Instagram page. I've given her a follow, and she's very fun. She puts her full self in, and it's a trip, it's a journey, so thank you for sharing, that with all of us and, hosting this great party. Maddie Murphy, thank you so much for your time. We'd love to have you back, and please do check out all of Maddie's work as well as her Instagram page and her book, Cosmic Zone. Maddie Murphy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
An honor. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for listening.
Well, that was a wonderful conversation. I was really able to learn a lot about Maddie and her inspiring story and transformation in ways that both intuition and astrological forces could really work hand in hand and influence your life in a lot of pivotal decision making and change and transformation. So thank you for tuning into our conversation with Maddie, and do check her out on social media as well as her amazing podcast and book as well. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you here next time on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder, where we'll continue to ascend our consciousness higher and higher, episode by episode. Thank you for tuning in.